This is what I found when I came back to replace the panel, and honestly, it was worse than I expected. If you saw the previous video, you know the homeowner called because their dryer stopped working, but the issue had nothing to do with the dryer. One leg of the 240-volt feed was dropping out, and once I opened the panel, I found corrosion all through the main breaker to bus connection. The screw was discolored, the metal was pitted, and the whole transition point was compromised from heat and oxidation. I was able to stabilize the system, clean the contacts, and get the home safely back online that night, but a repair like that only buys you time. Corrosion inside a service never improves, it spreads. So today, I'm back to do the actual fix, replacing the entire main panel and the service entrance cable, so this homeowner doesn't end up with a failure at 2 a.m. in January when the baseboard heat is running full tilt. Thanks to the generator hookup we installed earlier, the lighting is actually better, so I start by pulling the circuits that were still tied into the old panel and moving them over to the generator panel where they belong. Once those are landed, I go through and mark every circuit I can identify. Old panels like this usually have hand-scribbled labels from 3 different owners over 20 years, so half the job is decoding what goes where before you start pulling anything apart. After everything is marked, I begin disconnecting and removing all the branch circuits and the old service entrance cable. You want everything completely free before mounting the new panel, so you're not fighting wires while trying to keep the panel level. Once the old panel is stripped down, I drill a pair of 1 3/8 holes to line up perfectly with the 1-inch nipples coming from the generator panel. Getting that alignment right is important because if those nipples are crooked, the whole run of conductors inside them gets stressed. With the holes lined up, I mount the new panel and start combing out the branch circuit cables. And for whatever reason, the original installer left about 3 or 4 feet of extra slack stuffed in a full rat's nest above the panel on most of the circuits. Normally I'd roll my eyes, but in this case it actually helped. That slack let me reorganize the entire layout without needing to splice anything, which keeps the installation cleaner and safer. Right around this part, my camera battery died, which means I didn't catch the footage of me removing the old SEU cable and replacing it with a 2-foot PVC-LB to make the transition inside the sill. So you'll just have to trust me when I say I looked cool doing it. After that, I ran the new 4-wire SER cable, cut it into the panel, and started terminating everything. A 4-wire SER is what should have been here from the start. 2 hots, a neutral, and a dedicated equipment grounding conductor. With the neutral and ground bonded at the meter main, the panel needs to be isolated, which means running a 3-wire SEU was never correct. But at the time, someone either didn't know, didn't care, or was trying to save a few bucks. And that's how problems like this start. Once the SER was landed, I terminated the rest of the circuits, making sure every lug had full conductor contact and no insulation creeping under the connection points. Little details like that matter more than people think. A lug only grabs what it can physically bite onto, and if that bite is compromised, the heat from a high load will work on that weakened spot until it finally gives out. After everything was terminated, I labeled all the circuits I could, did a full torque check, and switched the house back over to normal power. Now let's talk about what I pulled out of this system, because this is the part that really tells the story of why this panel had to go. Up close, the old SEU cable feeding the panel had 2 separate issues. First, electrically, the previous contractor installed a new meter main and bonded the neutral and ground there, which is correct, but then they ran a 3-wire SEU to feed the panel. That creates a parallel neutral path, which is not only incorrect, but unsafe. Second, mechanically, the terminations were terrible. On the black conductor, the insulation wasn't stripped back far enough, so even though it was shoved into the lug, part of the metal contact area was literally insulated. That's never a solid connection. On the red conductor, you can clearly see from the impression on the copper that only a tiny 1/4 inch or so was actually under the lug. That's barely enough to hold the wire, let alone carry heat loads from electric baseboard heat, which this house relies on. Connections like that don't fail dramatically at first. They fail quietly. They loosen, they heat, they oxidize, they cool down, and over time that cycle repeats until the conductor loses enough contact area that the circuit starts dropping. Thanks for watching, and if you like real-world electrical diagnostics, repairs, and breakdowns from actual service calls, hit subscribe. I've got plenty more on the way.